want to welcome our viewers to
Yes.
Mindful. Mindful is our monthly series of interviews with our faculty, highlighting our scholarship and research here at William James College. You've had a long and distinguished career as most recently, but for quite a duration, as Vice President of Talent Management at Fidelity.
Yes, that's
and
true.
You are now transitioning from being a beloved adjunct to joining us as a full-time faculty member.
Yes.
And so we want to talk about adult development and its implications for leadership
Yes.
and leadership development. In our organizational psychology department, and I say this not for your benefit, but for our viewers,
Yes.
we have a real emphasis about how does one train a leader, how does one consult and coach a leader,
Yes.
what are models of leadership in contemporary developed nations. And you have a particular interest in a construct which I think outside of your world of organizational psychology is a construct less well known,
Yes.
and it's about a VUCA, VUCA, all in caps, world.
Yes.
Would you edify for us and
what
explain?
that is.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the place to start when talking about this intersection of adult developmental psychology with leadership is just to talk a bit about how the world that leaders operate in has changed. These days that there's a faster pace, that oftentimes we're surprised by events that happen. There's sort of this unpredictability in the system. When I was growing up and when I was a student, things were clearer, like things kind of fit in categories. That's less true today, and this word VUCA that you mentioned, which can sound kind of weird, it was coined by the US military back in the 1990s, and it's just a synonym, it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think, those four words really kind of aptly describe the world that we live in and that leaders today have to lead in. So I would say, if you turned the clock back 100 years, things were changing, but they were changing almost in slow motion. So you could be a leader in an organization and you could basically learn kind of the rules of the game, and you could pretty much spend your whole career either in a single organization or maybe multiple organizations, but kind of the way business operated, the rules of the game were consistent. They wouldn't change, or they changed so gradually that was kind of hardly noticeable. That's completely not the case today. Things change so quickly that what might have been true 6 months ago in 2016 or 2015 or whatever could be completely untrue tomorrow because of some technological change, because of some business change, etc.
I'm thinking about the following, that Jack Welch had built a very successful organization in General Electric, passed it on to Immelt, who really reconfigured the company in dramatic ways. And now they have a new leader, Flannery, coming in. And we don't need to speak the specifics of GE and how they're going to build out the next 10 years. But so Flannery is assuming this now in a VUCA world. How does he have to be adaptable and adaptive to succeed with this huge task?
Great question. He will have to be good at all of the things that leaders have always had to be good at. So he'll have to have a strategic vision for the company. He'll have to kind of mobilize the employees of the organization around the vision. He'll have to kind of motivate them, empower them, have clear goals, hold them accountable, all the things that leaders have always had to do. In the 21st century, he will also have to be very self-aware. he'll have to be constantly kind of re-examining his assumptions about the way the world is, because things change so quickly. So there's this kind of quality of fluidity or agility that he will have to kind of demonstrate. And actually, it's not a new thing. I would argue that Jeff Immelt had to do the same thing. So it's not like, we weren't in a VUCA world yesterday, but, when he steps in, it all changes. But if anything, he'll just have to be even more of that 21st century kind of leader, because as far as I can see, that rate of change, the rate of increase of the rate of change continues to happen. So, things aren't slowing down, they keep speeding up. So those are a few of the things. I would say a couple of other points. One is that these days, leaders have to be really good at taking multiple perspectives. So that can mean a couple of things. One thing it clearly means, because the world is also become so global, and that's an important point too, that's part of this whole VUCA puzzle, is that businesses operate in multiple cultures. And so a leader of a large multinational organization like GE has to be comfortable operating in different cultures with very different assumptions about people and how to motivate people and how to interact with people, etc. Leaders today have to be good at three-dimensional chess. And, it's like a whole other order of complexity, which is actually where the adult development piece kind of comes into play.
How does psychological research in adult development
Yes.
play out in your work?
Yes. Adult development is really a group of theories and perspectives that look at how adults continue to grow and evolve over the lifespan. Many ways, Freud, I think, really felt like most development is done by the time we become adults. But a lot of research over the last 40, 50 years at this point really suggests that that's completely not the case. To think in terms of operating systems. So we kind of all have our personal operating systems, which are, in a sense, almost a lens that we kind of experience ourselves and also make sense of the world around us. And it turns out that if you empirically start to look at different populations of adults, different people have different operating systems, and it appears that there's a kind of sequential evolution of complexity of those operating systems or meaning-making systems that people evolve through. And it's not like automatically, by the time you get to 50, you're in operating system X, because some people kind of are very comfortable where they are, and if their environment is not kind of demanding more complexity of them, they can be very happy and fine kind of staying at that point. But for other people, there's this continued growth and evolution. And in a nutshell, just to really simplify it, it's kind of an evolution from a kind of dependency, which is sometimes referred to as the socialized way of making meaning-making or socialized level, to a newfound autonomy where someone has kind of developed an internal sense of who they are, their own inner standards of how they see the world, their own sort of framework or point of view. And then there's a stage beyond that that's sometimes called the interdependent stage, or the self-transforming stage, where someone has kind of gotten to the point where they can actually hold up their own point of view as an object to reflect on. And so you can imagine, given what I was saying about three-dimensional chess, and leaders who can be effective in a VUCA world, there's really kind of a newfound need in the business world and organization world for leaders to be able to become self-aware of their own assumptions, deeply held assumptions and point of view. It's kind of like most of us are looking at the world through glasses, but we forget that we're wearing glasses. So if you kind of, as you start to evolve towards this self-transforming stage, you start to realize, oh, I'm wearing glasses. You can take them off. You can kind of reflect on them and figure out where do they fit, where do they not fit. Maybe there are other assumptions that work in different kinds of situations.
I want to underscore that there was, as you are an expert in, such a revolution 50 years ago in thinking that the 21-year-old now has completed their growth and development.
Yes.
And then they're off to having a fulfilling life, hopefully.
Right.
To the work of Erickson and Levinson and many others. Absolutely. About 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Yes.
Where we talked about a continued growth throughout the lifespan.
Yes.
And it's very important to be examining this. I say with a little bit of wryness that it sounds like there's a book in this.
Yes.
It sounds like a very exciting project.
Yes, I think so. Two things I should add. So the first is, because you mentioned Erickson,
yes,
and Levinson, and my thinking has been heavily influenced by Bob Keegan,
yes,
who actually used to teach at William James College back when it was MSPP. So Bob, I just think of as one of those giants, intellectual giants in the field of psychology and adult development, because what he really did, Erickson and Levinson were still working kind of somewhat in the shadows of Freud and psychoanalytic psychology. And what Bob did was went back and sort of took Piaget's constructive developmental framework and really applied it to ego development in a much more kind of global way that included the development of emotions, sense of self, etc. Certainly he's not the only theorist that has kind of taken this point of view, but a really important one.
I'm delighted that you had an opportunity to talk about Bob Keegan's work.
Yeah.
And we're going to wrap up in just a moment.
Sure.
A final reflection?
What's so exciting to me about this idea of kind of the intersection of leadership and adult development is that in the field of adult development, and that includes organization development, includes therapy, all kinds of things, there have been developed a lot of techniques to help facilitate this kind of evolution to later stages of mental complexity, from self-authoring to self-transforming levels. The field of leadership development, I think, is rife at this point. It's very open to taking some of these techniques that have been developed in different contexts and applying them to developing leaders in organizations. So I think that's where the payoff of a lot of the stuff is.
Really fascinating. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For more information about the faculty members interviewed today and the topic of discussion, please follow these links.